We actually wanted to do the obesity series in 3 parts, but when I looked at the content, I felt that I should probably add another part because there is a lot to say. So let's first take a little recap into what we looked at in part 1. In part 1, we looked at the statistics of obesity across the world, mostly from the USA and from India, some from neighboring China. We also looked at how men shape in the form of an apple and women shape in the form of a pear because of their sexual hormones. We also looked at the various methods of calculating and measuring obesity. We discussed the BMI and we discussed the hip to weight ratio. Let's go back a little bit and look at the figures on your screen, which are the obesity percentages global population in 2015. As you can see, men are about 10% among that and women 15%. If we continue on the slope and extrapolate these figures to today, that figure would be 23% for women and 15% for men, which means an average of 19-20% of the global population is obese. This, I feel, is a trifle bit higher and something needs to be done about that. How is obesity defined? Obesity is defined as, generally speaking, the excessive accumulation of fat. This is what the dictionaries tell you. And I'm okay with that, though technically better definitions are available. However, I have an issue with sites like Britannica Encyclopedia giving the cause for the obesity. So fat gets collected in the body in fat cells or adipose cells, and cells of the same kind come together and form the fat tissue or adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is located all over the body. There are 2 types of fat as we grow up. I'm not talking of the brown and the white. The brown is mostly with the children. As we grow up, it all but disappears. We are talking of subcutaneous fat, which is fat located just under the skin, and visceral fat. The subcutaneous fat has 2 purposes. One, it acts as an insulation against the vagaries of the weather. And 2, it protects us from minor injuries which would have otherwise affected us terribly. We are worried about the visceral fat. Visceral means within, inside. This is the fat which usually gets deposited in the abdomen and lower areas. This applies a lot of pressure on some of the vital organs and affects their functioning. Therefore, there is some sort of an urgency to attend to this, reduce it as much as possible. All sciences rely on something we know as the scientific method. The scientific method determines or defines how science should look at various things. This has been shown on your screen, and we will put the 2 hypotheses that I want to talk about to test whether they are actually following the scientific method or not. I will leave you to answer to that question. So the first hypothesis that I want to talk to you about is known as the energy balance hypothesis, or the calorie in, calorie out hypothesis. Very simply put, it says that calorie in minus calorie out is the calorie balance, and if that is positive, you will gain weight. If it is negative, you will lose weight, which in other words means that if you eat more, work out less, you're going to gain weight. If you eat less, work out more, you're going to lose weight. Let's see where this theory does not answer all our questions. So basically it boils down to intake versus output, or intake versus activity. Let's first look at intake. I have a few problems here. Number 1, all fibers contain calorie, but these calories are not delivered to the body completely, because fibers are not digested by the small intestine. They are passed on to the larger intestine, where some of them get absorbed and most of them get passed off as excreta for the next morning. Yet all calories contained in fibers are calculated in the food that you eat. Same is the case with proteins. The conversion of protein into energy itself is an energy costing reaction, and therefore the body doesn't prefer to use protein for energy. Yet when you eat food, all protein calories are counted. Fats, the same story. Fats are formed in different chain lengths of different fatty acids and have different metabolic pathways, how they are metabolized and further acted upon by the body. Yet in the energy in, energy out, all fats are supposed to contain the same calories. Also look at sugar. Sugar contains fructose and glucose in 50-50 proportion. While glucose is metabolized almost everywhere in all the cells in the body, almost in all the cells, fructose is metabolized only by the liver. Therefore, the availability of glucose to transfer into energy is much higher than that of fructose. Yet, they are both calculated in the same format and supposed to contain the same amount of calories. So also with macronutrients. Most macronutrients get affected by the time of storage, temperature of storage, then by the various cooking processes like peeling, scrubbing, boiling, heating, heating in microwave, ovens. All this affects the macronutrient ratios and the availability of these when you digest them. They cannot be considered as equal depending on the processes that they have undergone. Another problem that I have with this theory is the way calories are measured. There is a 19th century contraption still in use today known as a bomb calorimeter, in which a measured substance of the food is sealed in a container which is surrounded by water. There is a temperature gauge which measures the temperature of the water, and this food source, after introduction of oxygen, it is ignited or incinerated or burnt. Nothing of that sort happens in the body. Anyways, then the subsequent rise in the temperature of the adjoining water is calculated. As you know, food contains kilocalories, though they are called calories, and each calorie is supposed to raise the temperature of 1 kilogram of water by 1 degree centigrade. So these bomb calorimeters incinerate and ignite food, which we don't. However, today's system is known as the Atwater system. Under the Atwater system, all carbohydrates and proteins contain 4 calories per gram, fats contains 9 calories per gram, and alcohol contains 7 calories per gram. No consideration is given to where these calories are coming from, how they are processed in the body, what happens to them when they are stored, what happens to them when they are processed and cooked. All of these are supposed to contain X calories per gram, and that's it. There are a number of studies that I could cite as far as the intake part is concerned, but I would like to mention one because the number of participants was very high. The Women's Health Initiative in the USA conducted a study with 50,000 women. 20,000 out of them were put on a diet. It was estimated that the women were having 360 calories less per day. They were given regular counseling so that they don't sway from their diet and maintain it regularly. However, after 8 years, it was concluded that the women had lost on an average 2 pounds each. 2 pounds is less than a kilo, and it's really a waste of a lot of money and time spent on this study. Yet the funny thing was that they had all gained on their waist circumference. Coming to the activity part, I have had a couple of corporate conferences where I always start my lecture with a statement that exercise on its own has no role to play in weight loss. Almost always it stuns the audience into silent disbelief, and although it is a stunning revelation, it is very true. Study after study after study has revealed that exercise only increases the energy demand on the body, and therefore appetite goes up, you tend to eat more. Unless you are burning fats, unless you are losing fats, exercise has no role to play in weight loss whatsoever. Exercise has a zillion other benefits. I highly recommend it, and each one of us must exercise at least 4 to 5 times during a week. But do it for all these benefits and not if weight loss is your only aim. Again, on the activity side, there are so many studies, but I would like to point out that in 2007, the American Heart Association and the American College of Sports Medicine issued a set of guidelines which concluded with the following paragraph, which is shown on your screen. The funny thing is that one of the co-authors, in his own words, says that between the year 1970 and 2007, he must have run close to 80,000 miles, which is 130,000 kilometers. And yet over the years, he had gained 30 pounds. The Danes have done some very good studies on long distance runners, and one study, after studying long distance runners for over a period of 9 years, concluded that the average loss for each participant was 5 pounds, and that was just for the men. The women had not lost any weight at all. The Finns have done some wonderful, splendid studies. You could look them up in Google and see for yourself what the results have to say. I hope, in conclusion, I have been able to put enough doubts in your mind that are already there in mine, and we should definitely have a closer look, a re-look at the energy balance or the calorie in, calorie out hypothesis. The calorie in, calorie out doesn't work unless it takes into consideration where the calorie is coming from and what are the processes the food item has undergone. Well, that's it for today. Thank you.